So after having an absolute blast with the oh-so-cozy Lost and Random on last week's pickup video, I thought why not keep that feeling going and just do a full dedicated video just on cozy games since it's been a while since I've done one of those. So that's what we're doing today, is we're going to take a look at 5 different games for the Steam Deck that are perfect for cozying up with your favorite hoodie and a hot cup of coffee, or perhaps more appropriately a cup of tea if we're talking about the first entry on this list, and that would be Universe for Sale. Universe for Sale is a beautifully odd visual novel that blends cozy vibes with existential mysteries. And while I was expecting something more in line with coffee talk, instead I was treated to a much richer narrative posing deep philosophical questions, all wrapped up in a gorgeous hand-drawn world that feels fleshed out and alive from the jump. Within this dystopian adventure, you'll be playing as Master, a skull-faced figure making his way through a fragmented society. It opens in a rain-soaked tea house with an intriguing dialogue exchange between you and a woman named Lila who has a very unique ability. And what begins as a cozy tale about 2 people meeting over tea quickly spirals into a much larger existential adventure. And again, visually speaking, Universe for Sale is pretty jaw-dropping. The hand-drawn art style features deep oranges, reds, and dark shadows with pops of warm lighting punctuating the scenes. This creates a beautiful contrast between the comfortable, familiar interiors of the tea house and the looming industrial megastructures on the horizon. It's an eerie blend, to be sure, serving up a brilliant mix of the quaint and dystopian, something you'd expect to see in Transmetropolitan, and honestly I couldn't stop thinking about that series and how I need to revisit it, but I digress. The game's environments do a good job of making it feel like you've actually been transported to a whole new world. A new world that teases wonder and danger in equal measure, and you'll have plenty of time to, well, take your time and examine each new scene for additional details and world building. And all of this is helped along by some extremely sharp writing that makes even the most basic NPC interactions feel substantial. The gameplay loop mostly consists of exploration, reading through dialogue exchanges with some branching decisions, and occasional moments of simple interactions that mostly work, but we'll get to that in a bit. You'll interact with a colorful cast of characters, from a robot who's calibrating his communication drivers, to a suspiciously Chewie-like figure who's well-versed in the economy of Jupiter, to put it mildly. The narrative's tension grows as you start to uncover more details surrounding Lila's abilities, and what they mean for, and to, the surrounding cast of characters. It's weird, beautiful, and doles out a healthy helping of sci-fi that I was not expecting from this game at first glance. When it comes to performance, Universe for Sale doesn't miss a beat. There aren't any graphics options to adjust, and with the game's simple presentation, it maintains a rock-solid 60 FPS without any issues whatsoever. Moving Master around each new environment feels natural, and the animation is fluid. The only real hiccup I encountered was in one of the first interactive moments in the tea house. When interacting with this on-screen mini-puzzle of sorts, I appeared to have gotten stuck and couldn't perform the actions it was directing me to do using the analog stick. But after switching to a mouse temporarily, it let me complete the action. And I say hiccup because this didn't occur in subsequent interactive moments, so I suspect this might be a fluke at best or a bug at worst, but hey, with the Steam Deck's touchscreen and touchpads with an easy reach, this should only be a minor inconvenience if you encounter it yourself. In a nutshell, while Universe for Sale starts off as a cozy story of 2 strangers meeting, it soon pulls you into a universe where nothing is as it seems, and the stakes are a lot higher than you'd expect. It's a unique experience with no major failure condition that I can see, and I can't wait to see how Master and Lila's stories unfold. But now let's switch gears, trading out the existential musings and surrealism for something a little bit quieter with A Juggler's Tale. A Juggler's Tale is a captivating, fairy tale-like adventure that feels like a cozy storybook brought to life. Set against the backdrop of lush forests, cozy taverns, and rustic circus tents, the game pulls you into a whimsical world where every scene feels like it was lifted straight out of a children's nursery rhyme, complete with the rhyming narration. In A Juggler's Tale, you'll play as Abby, a marionette who's trying to escape the confines of a traveling circus. The game's narrator, who doubles as the off-screen puppeteer, controls the strings attached to Abby, adding a clever layer of storytelling.
Fortune has deemed her artiste extraordinaire, though not extraordinary enough to command her fair share.
His soothing, rhythmic voice guiding you on, while initially taking playful jabs at Abby's situation and your literal missteps. It's charming and a little bittersweet when you accidentally miss a jump, only to have him carefully reposition you back into safety so you can try again. Visually, the game is an absolute treat. The environments are overflowing with color and personality. From the warm, inviting glow of the tavern to serene moonlit forests, everything feels lovingly handcrafted. A lot of this comes from a vivid color scheme that has a similar watercolor aesthetic to Braid, just with a little bit more depth. But despite its cozy aesthetic, there's also an undercurrent of tension as Abby navigates through progressively more dangerous terrain that is filled with traps, obstacles, and an encroaching, heavier atmosphere as you get deeper in. I wouldn't quite call it sinister, but there's definitely an ominous tone that starts to creep in here and there. Gameplay-wise, it's very straightforward, but rewarding. You can move, jump, pick up or hold objects, and throw things. It's centered around light platforming and simple physics-based puzzles, but this simplicity shouldn't suggest that it's boring by any stretch. Rather, while the mechanics are basic on the surface, there's still plenty of challenge to be found here. For instance, you'll frequently waltz past objects that at first appear to just be set dressing, only to find out they're actually crucial to progression. Naturally, this results in a lot of aha moments. Also, beyond Abby and the objects she interacts with, you'll also have to take her strings into consideration, as these also factor into puzzle solving. Sometimes they're a hindrance that prevents your forward movement, while other times they too can serve as a physical extension of your movement to directly solve a puzzle. Case in point, I was scratching my head about how to get past a windmill before I figured out that Abby's strings were the key to unlocking the path forward. This is great not just because it's interesting, but it's also a brilliant metaphor for how Abby appears to be on a journey of self-discovery, literally pulling away from her strings. One of my favorite moments early on was freeing a bear from captivity, only for him to become an unlikely, though temporary, ally. And again, while A Juggler's Tale maintains its coziness, it's certainly not without its darker themes, especially when it started to dawn on me that not everything or everyone might be what they seem. Performance-wise, the game runs beautifully on the Steam Deck with a few minor considerations. You can crank up all the settings to max and still maintain a solid 50 plus FPS, but if you're looking to stay locked at a smooth 60, then dialing back the shadow and effects quality should be able to get you there. At this point, it's really up to you whether you want a flat 60, or if you're cool with maxing the visuals and maintaining relative smoothness through a 40Hz 40 FPS lock at the OS level. Either way, this game's art style doesn't absolutely need ultra high settings to shine, since the atmosphere and storybook visuals are enchanting enough on their own merit. But if you're a stickler for finding that perfect balance of quality to performance, you really shouldn't have any problems reaching it. Ultimately, A Juggler's Tale is a straightforward, not overly long adventure that you could probably knock out in an afternoon. And considering its charming aesthetics, clever puzzles, and heartfelt story, it's a great fit for people who like Little Nightmares but are looking for something a little bit warmer and more whimsical. Just remember, Abby's journey to freedom might not be as simple as it appears at first glance. And speaking of journeys, let's get a little bit more dynamic by trading in our puppet strings for dog sled reins as we mush towards our next title, The Red Lantern. At its core, The Red Lantern is all about the journey rather than the destination. You'll be playing as a woman who, feeling a bit lost in life, decides to start fresh in the snowy wilds of Alaska. But the good news is you aren't alone, rather you'll be joined by your pack of adorable, personality-packed dogs by your side, who themselves each have a unique range of quirks and abilities. And right off the bat, I love the intro for this game because before you go embarking, get it? Barking? Alright, I'm sorry. On a lightweight Oregon Trail style adventure, first you'll have to choose your pack. Initially you only have your own dog, Chomper, but before the adventure ramps up, you'll get to assemble your dream team of pack members who serve not just as tools for your adventure and survival, but also loving companions. And that's really where the coziness of the Red Lantern shines brightest. This bond with your furry friends is central to the experience because, just like you make mistakes, occasionally Chomper or some other member of the pack will also make mistakes.
I don't want to mess with that. Oh, Gail, I tried to warn you. Hold still, I got you.
And just like in real life, when someone you care about slips up, you'll have the opportunity to reassure them and strengthen that bond. Once you're out on the trail, the game shifts into a mix of exploration and lightweight resource management. You're constantly making choices. Do you take the path to the left, Haw, or the one to the right, G? It has a really nice relaxing flow to it, even when you're making important decisions about managing hunger and your dog's energy. You'll be able to set up camp whenever you or your doggos need to recharge, letting you cook some food, rest by the fire, and of course pet your dogs because yes, you can absolutely pet them for as long as you'd like, and it never gets old. But it's not all just about chilling in the snow. The Red Lantern has its fair share of tense moments as well. Along the way, you'll encounter wildlife like caribou, squirrels, or stinkier fare, and while these encounters aren't too intense or anything, they do add just enough variety to keep each run interesting. You'll need to decide whether to hunt for food depending on your food and ammo reserves, or opt to conserve your resources and mush on. One thing I really appreciate is how the game manages to stay cozy while still keeping you engaged with its survival mechanics. Because at first when I saw that there were survival mechanics, I was a little bit put off by this one since that's not really my favorite genre, and a lot of survival games can run the risk of getting too complex. Plus, it's technically a roguelite, but I mean that in the loosest way possible. And thankfully, the Red Lantern definitely balances pushing forward on an adventure with those quieter moments where you can just take a breath and appreciate the journey. And those softer moments at camp where you're sitting by the fire with your dogs under a sprawling starlit canopy really nail that cozy, peaceful vibe. And let's not forget about the visuals. The Red Lantern is a stunner on the Steam Deck and is one of those games that keeps pushing me towards finally taking the leap on the OLED model. You'll get that gorgeous, soft art style with vibrant colors in the night sky that make for a brilliant contrast against the crispness of those snowy Alaskan landscapes. Performance-wise, the game defaults to a high setting and doesn't have any more granular graphics adjustments. And at those settings, it stays at a pretty steady 60 FPS throughout. But hey, if you want to save some battery life, by all means lock it down to 40Hz if you want, and the art direction's still going to shine through beautifully. Effectively, the Red Lantern is all about finding your way, both literally and figuratively. It's not a game about reaching the end goal as quickly as possible, rather it nudges you to enjoy the journey, build on small victories, and to learn from your mistakes. Plus, you'll have your loyal furry friends by your side, ready to tackle each new challenge as it arises. And with that, let's leave the snowy trails behind and head into something that also has a slower pace, but is no less cozy. And in sharp contrast to the infinite runs of Red Lantern, you can probably knock this out in just about an hour as a short and sweet experience, and that would be Behind the Frame. Behind the Frame is a short, heartfelt adventure that's like stepping into a living, breathing painting. Between its Studio Ghibli-inspired art style and contemplative pacing, it is perhaps the most cozy game on this list, hitting all the right notes for a relaxed experience, while also letting you get a bit creative. The story revolves around Amber, a painter who's hard at work wrapping up her latest piece for an upcoming exhibit. What starts out as a normal day of creative whimsy, complete with coffee and a nutritious breakfast, slowly begins to reveal a greater overarching story of her artistic journey and the deeper meaning behind her work. And it really is captivating how seamlessly Behind the Frame manages to interweave art and discovery. Whether you're sketching out a new idea, refining your upcoming exhibition, or just putting some tunes on the boombox, each interaction feels weighty and impactful. It's simple, intuitive, and rewarding as all of these small details start to coalesce. And the seemingly mundane routine of everyday tasks start to take on greater meaning. Whether that's an old boombox you fire up for some jazzy upbeat inspiration, or sorting through the old notes driving your work, it all harmonizes beautifully into a cohesive story that only gets more captivating as you press on. Visually, you can't help but sometimes literally draw comparisons to Studio Ghibli. Its hand-drawn style perfectly captures the cozy warmth of sunlight pouring in through an open window, the vibrance of a creative space, and the quiet charm of a vivid daydream. It's also great at smoothly transitioning from the moment-to-moment action into gorgeous animated cutscenes, and it all feels perfectly paced. And don't worry about the puzzles. They're totally accessible and provide just enough of a challenge to feel rewarding, but aren't so deep that you'll get frustrated. We're talking more What Remains of Edith Finch than, say, Myst, and each one feels necessary. You won't find any throwaway fluff as you solve these, and each one I completed only made me more eager to move on to the next. They just nailed that sweet spot of making the player feel smart without providing a challenge that you'd call daunting. As a simple game, Behind the Frame is a rock-solid performer on the Steam Deck, effortlessly holding a steady 60 FPS throughout. There aren't any graphics options to adjust, but the game's painterly visuals don't really need any tweaking anyways. But one area I was concerned about going in was how it would control. Sure, it's simple, but as a cursor-based game, I'm always a little bit leery of games like this because I prefer to play games on a controller. Thankfully, using an analog stick provides smooth and accurate movement, and I had no issues to speak of. Although I suppose even if I did have issues, I could have fallen back on the deck's touchpads or touchscreen, which would also be perfectly suited to the experience, making painting and puzzle solving feel natural. Not to mention, as a fairly short game, it's great as a portable experience and shouldn't tax your battery in the slightest. Behind the Frame is the definition of short and sweet, and likely won't take you more than an hour or so to complete. But it's the sort of story that will linger in your mind long after you've rolled credits. Between its heartfelt narrative, charming visuals, and calming gameplay, I'm confident if you're into games that tell not just a compelling story, but do so in a punchy, well-crafted way, that you will have a great time with this one. And with that, we'll close out the sketchbook on this artistic adventure and step into something that, for me, was both familiar and totally unexpected, but ended up fitting perfectly to round out this list, and that would be New Super Lucky's Tale. And I say familiar and unexpected because, while I don't typically feature the same game twice on this channel as a general rule, I kinda had to make an exception for this one. I first showcased this in a pickups video almost 2 years ago, but it ended up being in the spotlight again today, and that's not a decision I made lightly. For a little context, normally when I make these videos, I don't just pick 5 games at random and call it a day. For safety, I usually select 5 that seem best, and then a handful of others for safety in case something goes wrong in the course of testing and production. For this, I'd actually intended to include Oaken or Spirit of the Island, but as I dug into those games, I found Oaken to be a little bit more complex than cozy despite its fall-themed aesthetic, and Spirit of the Island, while charming, struggled with its technical stability on the Steam Deck, which in turn led me to revisit New Super Lucky's Tale. Not only is it the perfect pick to round out this cozy list, but it also gave me the opportunity to capture fresh gameplay while revisiting one of my favorite platformers. At its heart, New Super Lucky's Tale is a love letter to classic platformers. With Lucky, a cheerful and agile little fox, you'll jump, burrow, and tail swipe your way through beautifully designed levels that are packed with surprises. And it draws clear inspiration from iconic platformers like Mario and Banjo-Kazooie, but it adds its own literal spins on the genre. Each level is brimming with personality and variety. From traditional 3D platforming stages to focused 2D challenges to test your agility, every area feels distinct and thoughtfully designed. Lucky's moveset is simple yet polished, and mastering it is a joy. Whether you're hopping across platforms, solving puzzles, or collecting hidden pages, every action feels precise and satisfying. On the Steam Deck, New Super Lucky's Tale performs like a dream. Even with the graphics maxed out at ultra settings, the game consistently hits 60 FPS, making its colorful visuals and smooth animation shine. Controlling Lucky is responsive and fluid, regardless of whether you're exploring a sprawling 3D level or navigating a more compact 2D stage. It isn't just a game that works on the Steam Deck, rather it feels perfectly at home on the Steam Deck, as comfortably as any Mario classic I ever enjoyed on the Game Boy Advance or Nintendo DS. As a portable experience, it's a fantastic fit. The liberal checkpoint system ensures a frustration-free experience, while its bite-sized levels make it ideal for quick pick-up-and-play sessions. And despite its approachable design, there's a rewarding level of challenge for platforming veterans and completionists. So despite its cutesy aesthetic, if you're bold enough to tackle some of those optional objectives, you'll find plenty to test your skills. But where New Super Lucky's Tale really shines is in its presentation. Every world you explore is overflowing with charm, from lush farmlands to mysterious temples. It's the kind of game that doesn't just stick to a formula, but rather keeps surprising you with new mechanics, clever level design, and unexpected twists. Which is perfectly appropriate considering Lucky himself is full of life with adorable animations and a playful energy that makes him just endlessly endearing. The game's vibrant color palette, whimsical art style, and upbeat soundtrack create a welcoming, feel-good atmosphere. And it's pretty rare to find a game that feels this joyful and polished throughout, and New Super Lucky's Tale just nails that on every front. So again, while it's not my usual practice to revisit games that I've already featured, New Super Lucky's Tale is a more than worthy exception. And if you are new to this delightful platformer, let me tell you, it's one of those games that just gets better the more you play. Whether you're diving in for the first time or just revisiting it like I did, it is an absolute joy and I highly recommend it. And in a bit of a change up for these style of videos, before we jump straight into the outro, I thought that I would start picking my favorite out of a selection of games that I feature on a particular video. And for this one in particular, my favorite out of all of them actually ended up being Behind the Frame. Now I won't entirely spoil why that is exactly since it's such a short experience to begin with, but suffice it to say that when I first went into this game, I was kind of expecting it would just be a moderately entertaining, so-so kind of, just chill out game, but what I was not expecting was just how fulfilling that narrative would be. So yeah, that one definitely takes the top spot out of all of the cozy games that we've taken a look at today. But yeah, what about you? Are there any particular cozy games that you've been playing or would recommend? Because I would love to hear about in the comments since I read all of them after all. But yeah, beyond that, as far as what's coming up on the channel, I am hard at work on a regular maintenance that I do on the Steam Deck video that I've been kind of kicking around for a while. And then also we will be taking a look at the games coming up for Steam in December, which is the other video that I'm working on right now. So yeah, okay, I think that just about wraps everything up. So as always, thanks so much for your time and hanging out here. If you liked the video, obviously you know where to find me. Have an amazing day, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.